Hey, we're live. I think probably on Facebook. Let's see. I'm going to reload my page. But for the sake of the podcast, welcome to I believe this is episode 47 of the Fetal Position podcast. So, thank you guys for being here for 47 episodes. I appreciate it, Derek and Petra.
We've been here the whole time.
Right. Thanks for sticking with me. I really appreciate it. So for those of you guys who will be, which as of right now, there's nobody, but who will be watching us live or listening to this is kind of like a new direction that I want to take with the podcast. It is a more like when we can, it'll be a 3-person conversation between me and Petra and Derek. And on occasion, I will also be bringing in other people as well for interviews and things like that they are either specializing in or they will be, talking about interests that are related specifically to what they're doing or something like that. So as of right now, I pretty much just want to dive into having you guys, Derek and Petra, go ahead and introduce yourself, who you are, what you're doing, like what you see your kind of role in the pro-life movement is, and then what, any other, random fun fact about yourself. You know what they do in in high school where they're like, tell me 3 truths and a lie or whatever. Let's do that. So, no, just tell me about yourself, and I already know everything about you because
That's right. That's right. I won't surprise you guys with anything.
No, but tell all of our many fans all about yourself. Patrick, you can go first.
I was gonna say I assume ladies first, so I'll go first.
This is not a misogynistic podcast at all.
No, not at all. Sure. But I will take that advantage. So I'm Petra, and met both of these dudes on the internet, not shady at all. And what I guess like my involvement in the pro-life movement actually came through Elijah's meme page a few years ago. My day job is with Option Line, which is through Heartbeat International. So a 24/7, 365 international pregnancy helpline. And so that is kind of what I do, is help with the day-to-day running of that and answering a lot of pregnancy and obviously sex-related questions. So for many things that I never want to hear again. And then kind of what I do for fun is writing. So I write for Human Defense Initiative, and I'm the content director there. It sounds really fancy, but basically I'm just like an editor and writer there, and for Pregnancy Help News and for Equal Rights Institute. So I love to write, obviously, which is why I do it so much without getting paid for it. So yeah, I don't know, that's kind of my role. I have some what I would call like practical use in the pro-life movement, but also kind of maybe just contributing to dialogue as well, hopefully, with what I'm doing.
You're also like a big science genius, right?
Come on.
Sure. Okay.
Come on. Tell us.
So I came to Columbus to go to OSU. So I spent 4 years in the chemistry department on the PhD track, and I ended up choosing to leave, and at that point I only had my master's. So I do have a master's in chemistry. You know it's the pride thing. I didn't really want to do the work for a PhD, but I really wanted the title. But anyways, so I spent, I took 3 years to get a master's instead of 2, and then I stayed for an extra 9 months before I realized that that's just not what I wanted to do. So yeah, master's in chemistry, so I can sound really smart about things and rub it in other people's faces. No, I'm just kidding.
Perfect. I like to sound really smart too by saying like things like single nucleotide polymorphism. Like even though that just means mutation, like everybody's like, wow.
Yeah, I've gotten to do presentations on that in group meetings in lab. It's really fun.
on single nucleotide polymorphisms?
Yeah.
Perfect. See? All right, cool. Thanks, Petra.
You're welcome.
Derek, who the heck are you? And why the heck are you here?
I don't even know why I'm here. I honestly, like, I should be in the middle because I'm stuck between two really smart people.
A stupid sandwich. We can put you in the middle if you want.
So I am Derek.
Hey, Derek.
I am from Indiana. Howdy. My profession is not in the pro-life movement. My profession is marketing. Background is in graphic design and stuff. Currently, I don't do much in the pro-life movement as far as probably Petra does, I would assume. But
Questionable.
well, yeah, I don't know. So originally, I helped launch Human Defense Initiative with Devin, and then he took a step out, and then I took a step in and helped out a little bit, and then I just kind of stepped aside to be just a normal contributor to help out. So I've only done a little bit there with contributing.
But he's got some awesome stuff.
Yeah, the things I have put out, I enjoy those things. Those were good stuff. Yeah, that's my toot. Actually, I will toot for a second. One of those articles, pro-choice concedes. That article made its way to the Supreme Court in an amicus brief for pro-life legislation or whatever. So that was pretty cool. That is certainly the highlight of one of the highlights of my pro-life work. So currently, what I do is, I try to stay involved in human defense. I'm a very busy person with work and family life, and so most of my time is just spent on Twitter, just interacting with all sorts of people. I've been doing this probably since, I don't know, I'd say like 2016, when not to get too into the weeds, but like whenever the election came around again, and whenever the election comes around, pro-life stuff comes up. It's like, oh, it's an election year, Roe v. Wade's on the chopping block, that kind of stuff. And so I wanted to get more informed. This is probably the first time I'd ever like took a deep dive into politics, and so I started watching a lot of like Klusendorf stuff, Scott Klusendorf, his debates. I read one of his books, and I was just amazed at like how much misinformation there actually is, and not just like it almost seems like outright like just, I don't know, lying. People on the other side saying certain things that just like, that's just not true. And then Klusendorf will be in his debate and he'd be like, here's the notes and here's the everything, and I'm just like, who is this dude? He knows his stuff, And so I got involved in just trying to learn more, doing a lot of reading, and so here I am now. I got in touch with Elijah. I don't even remember how we got hooked up. I know we
hooked up, yeah, buddy.
Yeah. I know
it was a one-night stand, nothing more.
Yeah, we've been buddies for a good while now, though. We talk a lot, so that's about it. You've derailed me. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to bring up our questionable past. Well, so you also have
romance.
Yeah, exactly. You also have a lot of experience in the whole not doing anything for born people ever thing, right? So
yes.
you hate the whole entire foster care system, right? So please tell me how much you hate it.
Yeah, I hate it. It's the worst. So no, yeah, like that's actually another part of our family, and probably what keeps us busy a lot of times is we have 2 adopted boys that we have adopted through open adoptions, both at birth. So we have like extended birth families and stuff, and we have been foster parents for a couple years now, maybe 2 or 3 years.
Oh wow! I didn't realize that it was only 2 or 3 years with the fostering thing, because it seems like you guys have just like been doing it forever. So,
well, yeah, like we've been very involved in like because our oldest son is 8, going to be 9, so like we've been involved in like the adoption orphan care type stuff for a long time, and that's been kind of near and dear to our hearts. And so before our second adoption, we decided to, I guess it has been almost 3 years, we've decided to become licensed and become foster parents and all that stuff. So that has been a heck of a eye opener, and it's great doing it practically, and it's great being able to say like, or to have that information to share with other pro-lifers, to share it with people who are just misinformed and not sure, because there is a heck of a lot of people that are misinformed about how that stuff works, or they confuse adoption with foster care. Like,
I've seen a lot of times where they'll say something like, why don't you adopt all the kids out of foster care if you actually care about babies? But actually, I learned this from you because I don't know a ton about the foster care system. Is that the point of the foster care system is to reunite them with their family? Like that's the whole point. Adopting out of foster care is not. It's not the intent going in.
Right. It's stabilization and safety. Getting them somewhere safe. But ultimately, it's trying to reconnect birth kids with birth family, or whoever those people were, and try to keep those connections alive and put them back. Basically, get the families help that they desperately need, so that the kids can go back. Right. And so, that kind of statement saying, adopt all the kids. It's just, you don't need to.
You specifically do, but the rest of us don't.
Yes, I got it all. I can do this. I got big shoulders.
Yeah, just handle the whole load. Okay, cool. So actually, and since the last time I think I was doing anything on the podcast myself, I actually have kind of changed my, I guess, involvement. I'm still doing the memes because that's just the bread and butter of everything that I am known for at this point. But I'm also the liaison between a local crisis pregnancy center, or pregnancy resource center is I think technically what they'd rather be called. It's called Compass Care, and I'm the liaison between them and my church. And I am attempting to do a little bit more in terms of like the academic side of things. I want to, and this isn't, it's not something I've officially started yet, but my goal is to kind of make this like flow chart sort of a thing where I give a bunch of resources that like, if they say this, we say this, but I also have to, preface it with like, this is not just a copy and paste, thing. It's going to be actually something that like will, if you have to actually understand what they're talking about, because it's one of those situations where like I've seen a need and I want to fill the need because I don't see anybody else doing that. So, and I think I have a pretty good idea of like how to get that idea across pretty quickly. But yeah, so that's us for those of you guys who are watching or listening in the future. So going forward with the podcast, it's going to like I said earlier, it's going to mostly be us three or me, well, potentially any combination of us, and then possibly a guest. But for this episode, I kind of wanted to dive into talking about the state of the pro-life movement currently, and kind of like where we think it is as it relates to politics, religion, things like that. So basically what we want to do is, make a lot of people uncomfortable and angry with us.
Kick the hornet's nest.
We really want to make everyone mad.
Kick it.
That's the plan. Okay, so first thing I guess I want to talk about is the pro-life movement and politics. I was... I don't know actually where you guys stand on the whole Trump phenomenon, but I was a, I don't know, borderline never Trumper. I never called myself a never Trumper, but I did not agree with almost anything that he did. I think I would probably generously put it at 10% I agreed with, but then like a Hillary Clinton, I probably agreed with 2%. So like people were like, well, why don't you just vote for the lesser of two evils? And I'm like, no, it's not what I want to do. That's not how I do things. My whole perspective on voting was that I'm consenting to being governed by a particular person. And if I'm going to consent to be governed by somebody, I'm going to consent to be governed by somebody who I agree with more than 10% of things. And even the 10% of things was like, not even things I liked the way he phrased them. And I wasn't even confident he was going to do that. So that kind of got me into some hot water, I guess, with a lot of kind of the pro-life movement generally. And I guess what are you guys' thoughts on the connection between pro-life community and specifically Donald Trump? I know he's not in the presidency anymore, but specifically Donald Trump. Do you have thoughts?
Oh wow.
Yeah, just do you have any ideas? On
I would say just off the top of my head, I would say that the connection between like Trump and pro-life obviously has created this like, that's bad. You know what I mean? Like just on the surface, the perception of that. Because with anything in the news and politics right now, it's pretty much determined anything connected to Trump bad. You know what I mean? So
you're saying you don't like that there's such a strong connection?
Well, it's just there. I don't. It's not that I dislike or like. I guess if there's something, I guess that's something we would have to address. Like if there's something that is there that is making the pro-life position look bad, like we should talk about it, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't. Okay, never mind. I won't say what I was going to say. I will say, I do not like the issue of abortion being tied to any single political figure or celebrity, whatever. I think the issue is bigger than a party, and it's bigger than Donald Trump. And so I think if you tie like all your hopes and dreams on one person, then they're just going to be crushed when this person messes up or doesn't get voted in or whatever. And I don't want to fall into that trap, because I want to keep fighting for the legal recognition of the preborn as persons, no matter who's in office or if there's anyone in office at all. And I want to do other pro-life work. So to me it makes me uncomfy. It makes me uncomfy to place all your ducks or all your eggs in a basket. A lot of ducks in a basket would be, I don't know what that would look like. No, so it makes me really uncomfy to do that. And unfortunately, I was not really involved in pro-life stuff or political stuff in general. I voted. Like, I see it as my civic duty to make my voice heard on those things. But I wasn't really involved in the pro-life movement until a little after Trump was elected the first time. So not even with election time. It's been more recent than that. And so I don't know. Maybe I've missed growing up tying everything to whoever the current Republican conservative president is for all of our pro-life hopes and dreams. Like, maybe since I missed out on that, I just am not too keen on doing that right now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
and Trump's not very tactful. Like, neither am I, but you have to be like a professional at least sometimes. And whenever he was, I was always really kind of surprised, pleasantly surprised, but I felt like I shouldn't have been surprised.
Right.
And so even if it's I liked some of the things that he did for the pro-life movement, I still I just don't want to fall in that line of thinking of well, if he or she or somebody else, if they don't win or if they get disgraced or whatever, now what am I supposed to do? I'll just keep.
Yeah, I think I went to my first March for Life. I think was in 2018, and then I didn't go the following year, and then I went to it in 2020, and so I don't have a ton of experience with it because like you, Derek, I know you mentioned that you started in I think 2016. I started in 2016 too. I think it was right around when I started, like actually actively doing anything, and then so I noticed that the march was generally like just a kind of cool place to go and then hang out and like with relatively like-minded people, but there was always like a small faction of people who kind of like were more alternative pro-life, but they all kind of met with each other, and so I thought that was pretty cool. But when I went to it in 2020 was the year that Trump was speaking at it, and it was genuinely just like a giant Trump rally, and I don't. No thanks. Like,
is that the one where we met because I was doing something with the Family Research Council or something?
Yes, and okay. I went. Who was I there with? I was there with somebody.
Ricky, maybe.
Ricky. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was there with him. So that's where we actually met in person. I think for the first time. Was it the first time?
Yeah, I think so.
And the only time now, probably.
That's right. What? Whoa. I mean.
Never again.
Like we're all gonna have like dinner together with our large extended families at some point in the future. That's what I plan
30 years down the line. Yep, all of our grandkids are going to be playing on their VR systems and stuff like that. But yeah, so when I went there the first time, I thought it was really cool. Like maybe it was just because I was like, fresh, I was new, and I was like, oh, this is so neat, everybody hanging out together. And then it just became like a Trump rally on the second time, and like I saw people like flying Trump flags the entire time, and it associated the movement itself with Trump in a way that it didn't before. And even though he was the president in 2018, it was not. There were some Trump flags, but it really wasn't that huge of a deal that he was the president. It was like you said earlier, it's bigger than one person, bigger than one political party. But when Trump was there, it became one political party. I mean, once we started the march, it kind of, that feeling sort of dissipated. Well, once we started to march, actually, there was like so many people filing out of the Trump rally portion of it that I think we were standing still. It was like the stand for life, stand forever in one spot for life for like, I don't know, like 2 hours probably. Like it was nuts. We were just standing there because there was like, I don't know how many people there were, but they were just filing out. And I noticed that there was more news coverage of it, minimally more, at least from what I can tell. And it was like the Trump rally at the March for Life. So like people who were anti everything, politically conservative or pro-life or whatever, were very much ready to jump and lump the negatives of Trump onto the pro-life community. Mm-hmm. So yeah, in general, I think it's obviously it's bigger than Trump, and so I think for me, when I first started doing like the pro-life community, pro-life stuff, my goal was to kind of be a force or maybe a force for unity or some kind. Like I've spoken twice at UC Berkeley with like Teresa and Pro-Life San Francisco. Both times I spoke on something related to unity. I did a lot of my earlier my podcasts and a lot of the stuff that I kind of promote on the meme page are very much to like, unify everybody together. But it seems to just have been falling on deaf ears because like I wasn't expecting to be the one to be able to unify everybody. I will bring balance to the force. I didn't have some kind of like idea for me to be able to do that, but it was very much like I tried really hard and only the opposite happened. Because not only was Trump a divisive figure, but he became a divisive figure within the pro-life movement itself. And then within the pro-life community, there were people like, just who seemed hell-bent on not being unified in any sense of the word. And like, one of the best things about it was that when I first started, it was like everybody, we can all have our own little places where we go, where we try to convince our friend group, our political group, our religious identity group, we can convince all of them to be pro-life, and then it'll be great. But now it's very much like, well, there's a Trump pro-life, and there's a left pro-life, and then there's anybody who isn't those things sucks, and it's like, well, okay, I guess I suck then. If you guys
just accept it.
Yeah, right. I'm just gonna accept that I suck, because like, as a libertarian, people are like, they confuse that with like libertine, and then they think that
shame on you.
I know I'm the worst.
Well, there's a lot of infighting within that group too. So.
Yeah, that's a subject all by itself.
yeah.
That, especially like even the libertarians, a lot of people will assume that all libertarians are pro-choice, but even like the party platform is pro-choice. But from my perspective, from what I've seen, is I would venture to say it's probably a 50-50 split, like within actual libertarians who debate the ideas and like are active in doing it. I would say it's about a 50-50 split. So the political platform is pro-choice because it's kind of consistent with, don't tell me what I can't do with my body, is like the whole thing. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So not a lot of thought going into that one from our point of view.
Right. Yeah. I mean, even you talk to the pro-choice libertarians, and it's very much straightforward. Like, you can't tell me that I can't do heroin straight into my eyeball. You can't tell me that I can't drive without a seatbelt. You can't tell me that I can't pay a hooker, and you can't tell me I can't get an abortion, which I'm like, yes, yeah. Also, no, because the last one's killing people. So you should probably just not. That would be great. But yeah, so I think, and then also, like, in my experience, I was also canceled. There was somebody on the left who attempted to cancel me because of I asked for memes as it related to the Ariel movie, and then somebody made a joke that was off color, and I did not delete it. I did not delete it. And then when somebody told me to delete it, I said no, and it was on the meme page. And then somebody attempted to cancel me. I was camping. Like, I don't think I talked about this like on my podcast.
Oh yeah.
I was camping, and I was so far away from everybody, and I had like one spot in the entire campground where I got service. And so I was out, I had my phone on me because I was taking videos of us kayaking. And then I started getting phone calls from people, and I got emails and DMs, or like, this person's trying to cancel you. And I'm like, I'm camping. I don't need this. So I tried to unify things, but nobody wants to be unified. So should I care anymore? I'm not sure.
Have I told you that I speaking of getting canceled, that somebody tried to dox me and get me fired from my job? Yeah.
Ooh. Was this recently?
This was a year, or maybe just over a year ago.
You may have told us.
It was before COVID-19, so it was more than a year ago.
2020 didn't exist. I'm convinced
of it.
And
no, it was over like, I had said something on Twitter, and this lady's like, you're a rape apologist, and you are so I do like a hashtag pregnancy helpline with like stories of what I hear or what my coworkers tell me. And she was saying like, you are like violating HIPAA, and these aren't your stories to tell, and you're violating these laws and whatever. And so you should be fired because you're breaking the law. And so she emailed my boss's boss, or she emailed Heartbeat or something. It got to my boss's boss, and she called me into her office, and she's like, so did you know that this happened? And I was like, nope. And she's like, well, I went through and like read all your hashtags, and they're fine, and you're not violating HIPAA, and like you can keep doing that. And she's like, I asked her to like email me like specific things that she had concerns about, and she couldn't. So I'm not really concerned about that. And so it's like, I'm not like, I'm not out here like trying to violate people's rights, obviously. But yeah, I don't know. She just got really offended that I was sharing some stories. It was a couple of stories of like abortion regret that really set her off, and so she was just like hopped on the, I'm just going to guess that you're violating HIPAA, even though I did literally nothing to violate HIPAA. So I didn't even have enough information to violate HIPAA. But yeah, so I got doxxed and she tried to get me fired. That was great.
That typically sets people off. No one regrets abortion. What?
Sorry, I didn't know it was so offensive. Like,
I actually, somebody tried to dox me. You guys know that Facebook page, Abortion is Not Murder? So Derek, because you're not on Facebook, loser. It's for social media. It's sort of like MySpace, except it was taken over a little while ago.
I'm familiar with MySpace.
There was this page called Abortion is Not Murder, and they actually posted as their story. I think it was a story on Instagram, and they posted something to their page, and it was a request to dox me. We need to dox the Dank Pro-Life. Whoever Dank Pro-Life memes is needs to go down or something like that. And so he requested somebody dox me. And then they ended up, they got a lot of information, but stupid them, all they did was find somebody with HR access to LinkedIn. And so they just got my resume. And it was actually an old resume because I hadn't updated LinkedIn since I literally lived with my parents. And so they got my old resume that had my parents' old address.
Oh my gosh.
So this is the first time I'm saying anything about it because I wanted them to think they got my address, but I don't care anymore because whatever. And so they didn't get my address, but they ended up getting a lot of my personal information, like, employment history and things like that. But because it was an old resume, it still said that I worked at the RV dealership that I didn't work at. So, I mean, I took my LinkedIn stuff down and I took all of my other resume stuff off of like Monster and all this other stuff down because that had legitimately had some newer updated information. So I immediately took that down. And so I don't feel like being doxxed anymore. But they also, because they got my parents' address, I texted my dad and I'm like, hey dad, they got your old address. I know you just recently moved, but they still got it. And he's like, that's all right. I'm like, all right. He goes, yeah, it's fine. We got lots of guns. I was like,
okay. He's probably not scared of some mail.
No,
yeah.
Not so much. Okay. Yeah. So I guess in general, my take on the connection between, and by the way, did you see Jamie? She posted, she said, should I care anymore? Talking about should I care about unifying anymore? The answer is no.
No.
But so just as a brief tangent, it bugs me though, because I see so many pro-life leaders who could, I want to phrase this in a way that's not rude, who could be doing so great if they just stuck to the pro-life message, but instead they've jumped onto all these other things that are
the Trump train. They jumped on the Trump train
for sure. 2 feet dove right in. It could be so cool if they were more just specifically involved in the pro-life stuff, but they are not. Anyway, so connecting it, I think, to a political party, I think is ultimately a bad idea, but I'm not sure how much power we have to actually stop that at this point. Yeah,
that's I don't know the answer to that either.
Petra, answer all my questions.
I don't know. I'm already over here saying I don't think we should put all our ducks in a basket, and with any single leader or political party, So I don't know how to I don't know how to disentangle it. I don't know if it's possible to do that at this point. So you just got to do the best with what you have.
Disentanglementalizable. I don't think it's disentanglementalizable. That's a word for you. There you go, bud.
That one of them biology words?
Yeah. One of them biology words.
I need a PhD.
You do.
No.
Or at least an MD. All right. So at least, yeah. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is connecting the pro-life movement to a particular religious perspective. So in general, I don't think I hate that the pro-life community is connected to Christianity. I really don't. I mean, I don't think it's that bad. No. I think it's actually kind of neat that, people will be like, what, it's always the religious people that want to force people to do stuff or whatever they're wanting to say. But at the same time, like, if it's Christianity that has to tell people not to kill people, okay.
I'd like it to be us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. At least we're not on the wrong side of this one. So yeah, I think it's not something I dislike particularly, but I also do like that there are non-Christians, like atheists or secularists generally, that are a part of the movement, because it does help lend itself to a little more credibility, because people tend to listen to people who are more like them.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes. If everybody who's saying something, it all belongs to a group that you do not self-identify with, there's not a lot of reason to listen to them at all, and to discredit what they say. No, I'm with you, and like, I don't think it's a bad thing for Christians, Catholics, Protestants, or other religious people to be associated with being anti-abortion. I do think people should maybe not be so quick to assume that everybody is religious or a specific type of religious.
You mean like pro-lifers assuming that about pro-choicers, or assume like?
No, I think both ways. So I think pro-lifers should not immediately assume other pro-lifers are religious or their brand of religion.
Specifically,
you're
Catholic.
an agnostic atheist, really? Okay.
Right.
Like, we speak the exact same language. It's just strange.
Yeah. But then also, I think for across the aisle too, like, I don't think you should be assuming someone else's like religiosity before asking them. Like, that's the very definition of stereotyping someone. And I still chuckle over it. It was like one of the most funniest things ever. I was cracking up at work, but there was like a tag your favorite Catholic thing going around on Twitter quite a few months ago, and I got tagged twice as someone's favorite Catholic, and I was like, guys,
you're my favorite Catholic.
So you like no Catholics? That's what I'm hearing. I was like, I'm Protestant. But so like, it's not to me at least, it's not an insult to like be assumed, that I'm Catholic. I was just like, I just thought it was very funny. And then somebody said, well, you're Cath adjacent because you're like in my Catholic Twitter all the time. So I just kind of assumed, but I do think that can, like, in a different context, can be harmful to jump to that conclusion of like, oh, you're pro-life, so you must be religious. Or another pro-lifer telling someone else who's like a non-religious pro-lifer, like, oh, well, you're not a Christian, you can't really be pro-life. Then, like, they're agreeing with you that killing humans is bad. Like, maybe you want to work with them on this.
One of the things that I found a lot of people do with specifically that conversation is they will say like, and this tends to be the more fundamental Protestant types, is they will be like, if they'll see that you are pro-life, and then they'll see that you are not Christian, and then they'll be like, well, how do you ground rights? Who gave the right to life?
Yeah.
Where did they come from? Blah, 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 blah.
Yes. And it's like, I agree.
Yeah.
Like, I agree with their questions. Like, I think those are great questions, but like, maybe we should save those for...
Right, like,
I don't know, maybe not like beating someone right over the head with it right off the bat, you know?
Yeah. Yelling about like, let's talk about the metaphysical foundations of morality, so that we, instead of rather like joining arms and being like, hey, let's stop the killing of babies. How about let's do that? Let's have a super heady debate about metaphysics.
Epistemology, like, how do we know things? Like, well, maybe we can start with killing human bad, and then we can go from there.
Killing tiny human bad.
Yeah. But no, I mean, those are great conversations to have, but I think it definitely also, like, it's great to acknowledge, like, I think the church has done great work in the pro-life movement, obviously. But I do tend to see from some like religious people, and it makes me just kind of sad, like a sense of elitism, I guess, that like, oh, we're pro-life Christians and we're doing so much good, and like if you're not our brand of pro-life, then like what are you even doing, or you should become really pro-life. I don't know. So I mean, like, it definitely you want to acknowledge the good that religious institutions have done for the pro-life movement, but I think you can venture into putting so much emphasis on, to be pro-life you have to be religious somehow or believe in God or be a Christian, that then you can just start to downplay the really good work that other people are doing.
Right. Yeah, you're seeing that a lot more, or well, I feel like I've seen it a lot, is the like the pro-life gatekeeping stuff. Like, you're not pro-life unless ... birth control, contraception. Huh?
Unless you agree with me on all these other things.
Right. Yeah. Like, yeah, here's my scorecard of like what is true pro-life. Like,
right.
Okay.
Yeah, especially I think, and this goes back into like the political world, is a lot of people will assume like that if you fall on the political right into the political spectrum and then they are politically left, that you can't actually say that you're pro-life unless you agree with their position on gun control, because guns take lives, and healthcare, because obviously the only way and the best way to be able to take care of people is government bureaucracy. And you have to care about the death. You have to be anti-death penalty as well, even though there's obviously some nuance there that allows for a little bit of thinking that's differently in that category. It's very weird.
But even then, like I've taken those conversations on Twitter, and I'll say, let's say hypothetically I was on board with all of your demands.
Yeah.
And is abortion okay now? Is abortion no longer okay? And they're like, man, screw you, abortion's still okay. Like,
yeah, that's like, so what?
You've just shown me that like all those things meant nothing.
Yeah.
Right. I asked somebody, they said you have to agree in order to be pro-life, you have to do this, 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 and this. And I didn't do those things, but I lied and said I do those things. Do you do those things? And he said, of course I do those things. I'm like, then would you consider yourself pro-life? And they're like, bah, and they freaking blocked me. So like it's just rhetoric. Like, it's just
could you just stop using logic, Elijah?
My bad.
Rookie mistake.
I know. How dare I? I need to jump back into doing memes, I guess. Those are
what you're good at, man.
Yeah, stick to that. Okay, so last thing I think I want to talk about is, specifically the pro-life, pro-science thing, because I've been, specifically as it relates to stuff about the pandemic, and not even just the pandemic, but like other things. Like, there are people who will call themselves pro-science and pro-life, or like, I am pro-life because I'm pro-science. But then you start to like poke around a little bit, and they are, so I guess to be fair, they would probably still call themselves pro-science. They're just actively spreading misinformation about things that are unrelated to pro-life stuff. And like, for example, I was having a conversation with somebody, and they just didn't understand what the difference, like they said something like, it's weird that the flu is gone now that COVID is here. And like, there's a legitimate biological explanation for this. And I believe it's called viral interference. And it's when there's two or more viruses that go in the same pathway in your body, they will compete in the same way that they compete in nature, and one will emerge victorious. So like, if you only see one, it's because there's two that are competing and one wins. So like, there's a legitimate scientific explanation for this. But in this conversation, there was a lot of people who I know would consider themselves to be pro-life, and they're just like saying these things like it's this like, haha, gotcha kind of a question, where they're just actively promoting this garbage. And like, as if I am literally a filtration engineer, and people will like argue with me about how micron sizes work, and I'm like, I know how they work. I know how they work. I literally work on them every single day. Like,
and it doesn't look very fun from some of the things I've seen.
It's not the most exciting job ever. So like, you got to be really bored to be able to have to dive into, micron sizes in your spare time. But like, so, and then other things like, you know, I know that it's pretty much everything that's politically, you know, oriented or politically tainted, like anthropogenic global warming or something, or well, like stem cells, like in vaccines, and like so
Kicking
much
the hornet's nest.
Yeah. So I mean, I hate to just lump them all in and say, you know, you have to believe these things if you're going to call yourself pro-science, because as somebody who has certain intellectual problems with certain mainstream scientific ideas, I wouldn't call myself anti-science in those categories. But like, you got to at least pretend, you got to stop pretending you don't know that you know what you're talking about when you have no idea.
So my question would be, like, do you think that the pro-life movement has kind of not co-opted, but like we've chosen to use the term pro-science because like it suits our goals and we think it makes us sound good, but really there's just a lot of people who don't know a lot of things except science and like this one thing, because that's kind of what that's kind of what I'm thinking, is that like we're really good about, like, we know quite a bit about the science of this one specific thing, and so we're going to say we're pro-life and we're pro-science, but then like on a lot of other things we're just ignorant on, which is not, like, that's not a bad thing. Like ignorance can be corrected. Like ignorance is a pretty natural, but like I'm not sure that you should you use that term to label yourself if you're really, it's only in relation to this one thing. I don't know. It seems like I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like the label is accurate, but people who use the label also make the label sound not accurate because they sound really dumb.
Like, right. Would it sound better if you were like, the science is clear about this, instead of just saying we're pro-science and you're not, you know?
Yeah,
like,
I mean, I think a lot of times it's used.
I guess like it's not so much like how you're saying it, but I guess that could help.
I think that phrasing is, and I even like being pro-life is pro-science. Like I think that's like that's true to an extent. We're pro the science that supports our position, which just happens to be like good, solid science, like, you know, 100 years or more of you know, scientific discovery to tell us when a human life begins. But then if you're saying you're pro-life and pro-life is pro-science, and then you say something really dumb about something else that is not scientifically supported, then you're kind of giving the whole movement a bad name because you as an individual have said something dumb. It's sort of the same thing, like if you're a Christian and you're a terrible person, then everybody's going to be like, Petra's a terrible person. She says she's a Christian, so like all Christians must be terrible people, right? Like I've just blown it for the rest of my homies who identify as loving Jesus. And
one of my favorite things, I think, when I talk about being pro science, or talk about, you know, just follow the evidence of where it leads, is like, especially when I'm talking with pro-choice people, where like I'll say, you know, the science is very clear. This is what it says. This is what it says. And they're like, oh yeah, the science is also very clear on masks. And I'm like, I freaking know. And they're like, the science is also really clear on this other thing, and I'm like, and global warming. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm very clear on nuclear power. I'm like, I know. Stop changing the freaking subject. Like, we're talking.
If I just say yes to everything that you just said, it's the same thing that Derek pointed out earlier. Of like, well, you're not really pro-life unless you do X, Y, and Z. Well, you're not really pro-science unless you do all these other things. It's like, or believe all these other things. Well, okay, well, let's just say that I do. Then will you agree with me on what I just said about something sciencey? And if they don't, then it's all a diversion tactic.
Mm-hmm. I like when people are when they have like pro science in like their Twitter bio or something like that, and then they're like, life doesn't even begin until birth. And I'm like, yikes, remove that, please.
I like to call those people hypocrite hunters. They're just they're just looking for a fight. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like
hypocrite
they're not looking for common ground. You could meet all of their standards, like Elijah said, like I'm on board with everything you're telling me, but we still can't connect on this one thing that I'm willing to connect with you on. And so like who's the problem here? You know,
right. Or if you try that, like if you try doing that, Derek, like I'm trying to like I want to understand your position better, like explain it to me, and I'll ask you questions and I'll tell you what I think about my position. It's always like you're not doing this in good faith. It's like I didn't know that. Please tell me more about my intentions in talking with you.
Crap, they figured me out.
right.
Jetpack. Gone.
No, I think it's really also important for pro-lifers to realize the distinction between science and philosophy, right? So like pro-life is pro-science, so we that's so affirming. Just like, yes, Petra, that's so smart.
Amen. Preach it.
Right, this science does tell us when a new human organism begins to exist, and for a lot of people that is the barrier or a barrier to being pro-life. They may really not believe that, but a lot of people do accept that, right? And then still go on to say, but philosophically, like even though it's a living organism, we don't have to treat it morally or ethically as a person. So science only gets us so far in the pro-life movement, and I think it gets us a large part of the way for a lot of people, but not for everyone. I think people who think more deeply, like more than your just average bystander pro-choice person. Like for the average Joe, like the science can probably get you pretty far, at least to coming to some common ground. But for somebody who's thought about it more, like Boonin or Singer, or someone who's like, yeah, they're alive, we can still kill them.
Yep.
Right.
It actually reminds me a lot of I follow a handful of like Christian teachers, apologists, and things like that. And there's a guy named William Lane Craig who says that science ultimately cannot prove or disprove that God exists, but it can provide a good support for premises in an argument for God's existence. And so I think of this as the same thing, because ultimately, whether or not abortion is right or wrong is a moral claim. And so if we are going to be making a moral claim, we have to at least bring in some kind of a moral premise in here somewhere. So science can support that abortion is in fact killing a human being and all these other things. But at the end of the day, you can't just look at science and be like, well, because a human being is being killed, therefore it is wrong. Because there's a leap there that we're making that we shouldn't.
Yeah, science can't make that moral jump, but science can't give like cannot answer an ought question, like should we, shouldn't we question. Yeah, I love William Lane Craig too, so.
He's my favorite.
Yeah, but wasn't it? I think it was Greg Koukl that made up the phrase. It was like we can't answer the question of can we kill this thing without the first answering the predicate question of what is that thing. And so it's like you're trying to answer this philosophical moral question, but yeah, like you said, Elijah, like you need this like underlying foundation of much more.
Yeah, that's why a lot of times, like if somebody, if I'm talking to someone, I'll kind of like backtrack and be like, well, okay, can we at least agree, like can we come to common ground about what science says about a human organism and when they begin to exist and live? And like if we can come to agreement on that, then I'm willing to talk with you philosophically. But if we can't come to an understanding on the science part, I'm not going to talk philosophy with you, because we're fundamentally not agreeing and talking way up here. Sorry, my camera, it's like backwards. So if you're talking like way up here about philosophy and we don't agree down here on the science, then what is the point? We have to start from common ground somewhere so that we have like a common starting point to then say, this is where I disagree with you.
Yeah, that's the article that I've been wanting to work on, is like the pro-life, pro-choice roadmap of like, we discover a pregnancy. Then what does the train of thought, like, how does it work? And typically it's like, okay, we're going to look at science. Like, what is this? And then pro-choice is like, mother's rights, bodily autonomy. And it's like completely avoiding all of that. Some people do, they will hit on that and be like, yes, like you said, Boonin and stuff. They'll say like, yes, it's human. We'll give you that it's a person, etc. And they just move straight to trying to justify it other ways. And so it is interesting to see how people just completely overlook things or question beg to make their position correct for themselves.
Yes. All right. Yes. So I think I think that's all I had that I want to talk about today. Did you guys have any last thoughts on anything? I mean, other than all of everything that we could continue to talk about forever.
No, I think I'm just going to finish my beer and read a book and call it a night.
Sounds amazing. All right, cool. Well, thanks everybody who popped in and out during the live stream. Thanks for the people who are listening after the fact. And next up will probably be an interview episode because I'm going to try to, like we were talking about earlier, kind of like every other kind of a thing. Like we'll talk about something big with us three, and then we'll do an interview episode with some combination of us. The next one will, I'm thinking it's going to be the vaccine one. I think we got to do the vaccine one.
Yes, let's do it.
So for those of you guys who are listening, the plan will be this will be monthly. The episodes themselves will probably be every other week, but this format will be monthly. So up on the next month, whatever month today, March, April. So in April, the end of April sometime, it'll be us discussing vaccines, the use of fetal cells / why are you injecting whole aborted babies into me? So
whole one straight into your arm.
Yep, the whole baby. Yeah, that'll be the subject.
That's probably not the best joke to make. I don't know.
It is 10:30 at night, so we're allowed to, and you're mostly drunk, so.
Yeah, half a Guinness down. I'm way over the
line. All right, cool. Well, I think that ends this episode, and in post-production, This is where I would probably add music. So I will talk to you guys later.
Cue the music.